What's up guys, today I'm going to be telling you about how to make a Tesla killer. Now I'm pretty sure you yourself aren't actually going to do this or make an electric car and make it a Tesla killer. Or you can team up with some people, maybe you are working on that right now, I don't know. But basically I'm talking about a sort of checklist of points that actually establish if you made a Tesla killer or even a Tesla competitor. Before we get into it, like the video and subscribe if you haven't already because this will be a good one, I hope. Alright, so for starters we have the range. The range has to be a minimum of 250 miles, no matter what type of car it is. Preferably 300 miles, and that's real world range. Teslas do get 300 miles in the real world range with their top model, so that's something that almost every car manufacturer has to keep up with. And this is only 2020. In like 2022, 2023, 2025, whatever it is, you'll probably need a 500 mile range by then. So if there are cars coming out by 2025 and they only state they're going to have like 250 or 300 mile range, you know they're not going to compete with a Tesla for shit. Now the second point I have is that those cars need to actually look good. Most cars, especially most EVs, don't really look that appealing. Tesla's the exception here, and maybe the Porsche Taycan, but most other cars don't look that good. They're not like, wow, that car looks good. Like a Tesla has some presence. They look good. Now obviously looks is subjective, but in my view at least, Teslas look really good compared to any other car, and it's very easy to spot them on the road because they just look better. They look futuristic. They look better. They look sexier. That's all I'm trying to say. Now the third point we come to is the charging. Now obviously the feature is EVs, right? There's no doubt about it, and you're gonna need to fill up your battery with electricity, and you need to do that in a very quick manner if you want to even compete remotely close to the gas competitors. The gas cars can fill up within what, 5 minutes, so obviously EVs aren't there yet, and eventually I do feel like they'll actually get there at some point. But most of the other manufacturers, their inefficiencies are just incredible. They're using a big battery pack, they're having slow charging speeds, and because their cars are just inefficient, you're not getting any miles out of it. So you have a 200 mile range e-tron, for example, that has a 90 kilowatt hour battery pack, maybe 100 or something like that, and it can only charge at about 150 160 kilowatts, which isn't slow. Let me be clear, it isn't slow. But after charging for 40 or 50 minutes to get from like 0 to 80%, for example, you have only gained about 160 miles. So you can only drive for 2 hours and then you have to stop again. Whereas with other cars, like, okay, the Taycan is one exception because that car can charge really quickly if you can find a charger that can supply the power. I think it can charge at 260, 270 kilowatts, which is incredibly fast because it has an 800 volt architecture. I'm not going to get into the technical details. Basically, it can charge faster than a Model 3. But it has a range 2/3 of that of the long range Model 3, which means when you're pumping in all that juice, you're not really getting the range figure. Even though you're charging quicker, it's like you're comparing, for example, filling up a pickup truck versus, say, your Prius. Terrible example, but Prius, very efficient, gets 50 miles to the gallon, can have a smaller fuel tank, and it can go on more. But a pickup truck, you got a V8 engine, you have a nice heavy pickup truck, maybe some load in the back, and maybe you're carrying or towing something, and you're probably getting like 20 miles to the gallon. Probably less than that, you're probably getting less miles per gallon, but basically you're getting less than half the efficiency. That's basically the same thing you can consider the Porsche Taycan. Although it can fuel up in 20 minutes probably to get you enough range to go to the next charger, you're only getting about 160 miles of range in that 20 minutes, whereas a Model 3 might actually get over 200 miles of range in the same amount of time. That is where charging speed becomes irrelevant because it's more about how many miles can you add in, say, a 5-minute period. Right now Teslas can only do about 75 miles on their fastest chargers in 5 minutes, but eventually we'll probably get to a point where it can go over 100 and then probably eventually over 200 miles of range added within 5 minutes. Now the next point is one of the most important points that no one really does yet, or I hope they are, but they are not as committed to doing it as Tesla is, and this is really important to become like a sort of Tesla competitor. It's having full self-driving, or not actually even solving full self-driving, it's just having the capability on the car for the car to have the ability to fully self-drive in the future, sometime in the future. Tesla isn't that far off. Some people might disagree on that, but they are definitely not that far off. By 2025, if the regulations approve, you'll be able to go to sleep in the back of a Tesla while it takes you somewhere to your destination. And the only time you would need to get out of the car is basically to when you need to charge it. So that means if you're like drowsy from work or something, you're very tired, you want to like literally just go to sleep, but you have a 2-hour commute to go home, you literally just go to sleep in the back of the Tesla while it takes you home, assuming you have enough range, of course. So full self-driving is one of the most important aspects of EVs and just the adoption of like newer technology. Almost no car actually really has anything related to full self-driving. Yes, they have these stupid systems like, oh, it can keep track in front of the car in front of it, but we've had that for 15 years now. And then basically the newest feature that almost every car has is like where it can just stay in its lane, but that's about it. So which is basic autopilot, but basic autopilot is still more advanced than that system. And then full self-driving adds on top of that. It can change lanes for itself. It's starting to navigate streets. It will start to navigate streets by the end of this year, that's my guess. And all that added together just implies that you're going to get more cars on the road, more cars with full self-driving, more safer cars on the road, and basically it's just going to be a better experience to own a car. And the last thing I want to come to is that most cars on the road need to be more user-friendly. All cars today have buttons. They have to be software oriented like a phone. When the first iPhone came out, it literally only had one button at the front, which is the home button, and now we've got rid of it with the new iPhones, or just even pretty much any other phone on the market. It's just literally a slab of glass on either side, with one side having a screen, which now we're getting to folding phones, so we're going back to the past. I don't know how that actually works, but basically you have phones that are all screen, and basically not everyone, but a lot of people at the time were like, why would I ever buy this stupid contraption, whatever it is? Why would I ever use that? It doesn't even have a proper keyboard or anything. But look at you now. Everyone has a smartphone. And if you don't have a smartphone, chances are you're either really old or you're using it for a such and such purpose, for maybe your work, or just because of how you live life for whatever reason. I don't know. And cars will be like that in the future. Everything will be software oriented, and cars last a much longer time than a phone. So you would want a full-on screen, so over time you can just update the software and everything so it can stay up to date, get all the newer features, get like whatever fart mode, I don't know what you want. It's just a cool gimmick really at this point, but it works out. Basically, you want to bring that to a car and make your own system. Now, Polestar is doing this with their new car, which Polestar 2. They have a pretty much all-screen layout, and I think they barely have any buttons. I think they do have some buttons, but not much. And most newer cars coming out with the concepts and whatnot, it's all screen. So people need to get on that. Now here's another aspect that other car manufacturers might want to consider to try and get into, because I think a big part of Tesla actually selling their vehicles has to be this, and it is the cool factor. When you say you have an electric car, it's not really cool. Just like when you have, say, a MacBook, you don't say, oh, I have a laptop. No, you say, I have a MacBook. There are only a few people that actually say, oh, well, I use a laptop, or like an Apple laptop. You just say a MacBook. That's how Teslas actually work. There's like some like cool factor to it. You can't just say, oh, I drive an EV. There's no real cool factor to it. But if you say, oh, I drive a Tesla, there is a cool factor associated with it. Your image and perception to the other person changes, and I think it's just that entire feel that you get out of it by saying that you drive a Tesla, and by the other person perceiving what you mean by, oh, you drive a Tesla. That means you're probably driving a higher end car. It's a fast car. People know that. If you say you're driving a Chevy, which Chevy? Well, it's an EV. The hell is that? No one's gonna know what the hell you're talking about. But when you say you drive a Tesla, you're like, wow, man, aren't those like, they're cool, they're fast, they look good and all that crap? You have to have that cool factor. And if you do all the above things correct, I think the cool factor can become pretty much a side effect of it, because you're building a car that appeals to the masses, that is a genuinely a good car. And if you can do that, any car can become cool, and Tesla is a master at that. They're a master at building cars that everyone loves. Just look at the Cybertruck, for example. They did not give a shit that what anyone thought about it, but apparently everyone loves it. Or not everyone, but there's a lot of people that love it. Over 1 million pre-orders shows that a lot of people love it. A Tesla killer is just a Tesla that is designed by another manufacturer that is compelling enough that it can probably outsell some of the actual Tesla vehicles. Those are basically my few step rule. I forgot how many steps I said. I think I said like 5 or 6 steps, but those are just my 5 or 6 steps of basically building a Tesla competitor or a Tesla killer. If you want to make a Tesla killer, it has to obtain all these characteristics. If it does not, it will not be a Tesla killer. Let's be honest, it will not, and basically you can probably compete with it. Like the Leaf still sells, people are still buying a Leaf. It's a shitty car, has barely any range, battery overheats, you can't take it on long road trips. People still buy it, so you can make a car that sells. But if you want to make a Tesla killer, you have to account for all the points that I made above. Now, if you have any points, if you feel like I missed something, let me know in the comments down below and I'll talk to you there. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I will talk to you in the next one. All right, peace. So if you enjoyed this one, thank you for watching. Really. So if you enjoyed this one, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, and I would like to see now. What the fuck am I saying?